December 1944. The Panzer IV tank column was advancing relentlessly through the snow-covered forest near St. Vith, Belgium. 8 heavy tanks moving in combat formation. The column commander was Major Ernst Weber. Weber was veteran Panzer commander with 43 tank kills attributed to him. Weber believed German armor was unstoppable. Weber believed the Americans were weak. Weber was wrong. The 1st Panzer approached the American defensive line with absolute confidence. The Americans had no anti-tank weapons visible. The Americans had only rifles and grenades. Major Weber calculated the battle would be over in 30 minutes. The American infantry would be annihilated. Sergeant James Mitchell was working under the disabled Sherman tank when he heard the sound. Heavy engines. Multiple heavy engines. German tanks. Mitchell's heart accelerated. Mitchell immediately understood the tactical situation. 8 tanks against infantry with rifles. The mathematics of death were simple. American soldiers would die systematically. The position would be overrun. The battle would be a massacre. Mitchell emerged from under the tank covered in grease and motor oil. Mitchell's eyes scanned the perimeter. Mitchell saw American soldiers preparing defensive positions with desperate urgency. Mitchell saw officers trying to establish some form of coordinated defense with useless weapons. Mitchell ran toward Captain David Harrison, who was commanding the defensive position. Harrison was studying a tactical map, trying to calculate impossible odds. Harrison looked up and saw Mitchell approaching with intense purpose. Harrison could see something in Mitchell's expression. Determination, confidence, dangerous certainty. Mitchell's face showed a man who had suddenly understood something crucial about the situation. "Sir, we can stop them," Mitchell said directly. Harrison looked at Mitchell with confusion and skepticism. "Stop them? Sergeant, we have no anti-tank capability. We have no weapons that can penetrate panzer armor. We have rifles and grenades. Against 8 Panzer IV tanks, rifles and grenades are useless. We need to evacuate this position immediately or every soldier here dies." Mitchell was already moving toward the maintenance area. Mitchell was running with purpose. Mitchell understood mechanics. Mitchell had spent 2 years maintaining Army vehicles. Mitchell had studied tank armor vulnerabilities. Mitchell knew that every tank had weaknesses. Mitchell knew that improvisation could overcome superior firepower. Mitchell knew that one disabled vehicle could be converted into a weapon of devastating proportions. The maintenance area contained fuel supplies, ammunition, explosives for mining operations, and tools. Mitchell began gathering materials with rapid efficiency. Mitchell was thinking tactically. Mitchell was thinking about tank formation tactics. Mitchell was thinking about German command structure. Mitchell was thinking about how to create maximum shock and damage. Mitchell gathered 5-gallon fuel containers. Mitchell gathered box after box of dynamite. Mitchell gathered blasting caps and detonator wire. Mitchell was connecting explosives with technical precision born from years of engineering experience. The disabled Sherman tank sat 50 meters from the main defensive line. The tank was positioned directly on the forest road that the German column would use for advance. The tank was partially concealed by fallen trees and debris. The tank looked abandoned. The tank looked useless. The tank was about to become a weapon of terrible effectiveness. Mitchell began loading explosives into the tank's hull. Mitchell placed 300 pounds of dynamite throughout the tank's interior compartment. Mitchell positioned the explosives to create maximum blast radius. Mitchell arranged fuel containers around the explosive packages to increase blast effect and fire intensity. Mitchell was creating a booby trap of devastating capability. Mitchell was working with intense concentration and extreme speed. Mitchell had approximately 12 minutes before the 1st Panzer would reach the trap position. Mitchell's hands were moving with mechanical precision. Mitchell was connecting detonator wires to blasting caps. Mitchell was testing each connection. Mitchell was positioning a pressure-activated trigger mechanism that would respond to the weight of a 60-ton tank. Mitchell had to be absolutely certain the trigger mechanism would function perfectly. Failure meant American soldiers would die. At the 10-minute mark, Mitchell heard it unmistakably. The sound of heavy tank engines getting closer. The sound was getting louder. The sound was becoming more immediate. The sound was the sound of American death approaching. Mitchell was completing the final connections. Mitchell was placing the last fuel container. Mitchell was testing the pressure plate mechanism one final time. The mechanism was responsive. The mechanism would trigger. Mitchell armed the trap at the 9-minute mark. Mitchell ran back to the defensive position. Mitchell found Captain Harrison coordinating last-minute defensive positions. Mitchell told Harrison the trap was ready. Mitchell explained that the first tank would trigger massive explosions. Mitchell explained that the blast would disable the first Panzer. Mitchell explained that American soldiers needed to be positioned behind the ridge to avoid secondary blast effects. Mitchell explained that this was their only chance. Harrison was skeptical, but had no alternatives. Harrison had already accepted that American soldiers would die in this position. Harrison had already prepared for massacre. Harrison had already calculated casualty rates. Mitchell's trap represented the only possibility of survival. Harrison ordered American soldiers to position behind the protective ridge. The first Panzer appeared through the trees at the 4-minute mark. The tank was enormous. The tank was moving with absolute confidence. The tank commander was standing in the turret opening, studying the defensive positions. The tank commander saw no anti-tank weapons. The tank commander saw only infantry with useless rifles. The tank commander was smiling. The tank commander believed the battle was already won. Mitchell was crouched behind the ridge with the detonator trigger held firmly in his trembling hands. Mitchell was controlling his breathing. Mitchell was controlling his fear response. Mitchell was maintaining absolute focus. Mitchell's entire plan depended on precise timing and perfect detonation. The Panzer was approaching the trap position. The tank was 50 meters away. The tank was moving at slow combat speed through the snow. The tank was moving directly toward the disabled Sherman. The tank commander did not notice the disabled tank because the tank was camouflaged with branches and debris and looked abandoned and harmless. 40 meters. The Panzer's forward track was getting closer to the pressure plate trigger mechanism. 30 meters. Mitchell's finger was positioned on the detonator trigger. 20 meters. The first Panzer was moving directly into the trap zone. 15 meters. The tank's front track was approaching the trigger point. 10 meters. The tank's forward track was now directly over the hidden pressure plate. 5 meters. The pressure plate was being compressed by the weight of the 60-ton tank. Mitchell pressed the detonator trigger with absolute commitment. The explosion was catastrophic beyond human description. The disabled Sherman tank erupted in a massive fireball. The explosion was so powerful that it lifted the 60-ton Panzer IV tank completely off the ground. The tank's armor was breached. The tank's turret was blown sideways. The tank crashed down on its side in burning wreckage. The Panzer commander was killed instantly. The tank crew was incinerated. The first German tank was completely destroyed. German tank commanders in the remaining 7 tanks were shocked into momentary paralysis. They had witnessed the impossible. The lead Panzer had been destroyed by explosion. The explosion had been enormous. The explosion had vaporized German armor like paper. German commanders did not understand what had happened. German commanders did not know if the road was mined. German commanders did not know if more traps existed. German commanders were experiencing tactical shock. German commanders were experiencing fear. That moment of hesitation was decisive. That moment changed the battle outcome. That moment saved American lives. American soldiers along the protective ridge opened fire with every weapon they possessed. American rifles fired rapidly. American carbines fired continuously. American machine guns fired in sustained bursts. American soldiers threw grenades at the confused panzer column. The German tanks were momentarily disorganized. The German tanks had lost their commanding officer. The German tanks did not have coherent tactics. The 2nd Panzer tank commander made the crucial decision. The commander ordered immediate retreat. The commander ordered the remaining tanks to withdraw. The commander understood that the road was not safe. The commander understood that whatever had destroyed the first tank could destroy others. The commander ordered the retreat signal. The German column reversed course. The remaining tanks began moving backward away from the American positions. The German armor was retreating. American soldiers watched the German tanks withdrawing. American soldiers realized they had survived. American soldiers understood that Mitchell's trap had changed everything. American soldiers realized that German armor could be stopped. American soldiers realized that Americans could fight back against German tanks. American soldiers realized that courage and ingenuity could overcome superior firepower. General Charles Harrison arrived at the position 2 hours later with his command staff. Harrison was the division commanding general. Harrison had heard about the destroyed Panzer. Harrison wanted to understand how an American defensive position with no anti-tank weapons had destroyed a German Panzer. Harrison wanted to understand what had happened. Harrison drove directly to the defensive line. Harrison saw the destroyed Panzer burning in the snow. Harrison saw the burned-out wreckage of the German tank. Harrison saw the disabled Sherman tank that had been converted into a trap. General Harrison called for Sergeant Mitchell immediately. Mitchell appeared in military uniform with grease still visible on his hands and face. Mitchell had not yet cleaned up from the explosive work. Mitchell was standing at attention, facing the division general. General Harrison was studying Mitchell intensely. General Harrison was examining this young mechanic who had just destroyed a Panzer IV tank using improvised explosives and mechanical thinking. Sergeant Mitchell, what you did today was insane, General Harrison said directly. You destroyed a Panzer tank worth more than $1 million using a disabled American tank and improvised explosives. You saved this entire defensive position. You saved the lives of 247 American soldiers who would certainly have been killed in direct combat against 8 Panzer tanks. Mitchell was standing at attention, listening to the general speak. Mitchell was not displaying any emotion. Mitchell was exhibiting the discipline of a professional soldier. Mitchell understood the significance of what he had accomplished. Mitchell understood that his mechanical knowledge had translated into military advantage. General Harrison continued speaking. Your tactical thinking and mechanical expertise are exceptional. You understood armor vulnerabilities. You understood explosive dynamics. You understood that improvisation could overcome superior firepower. You've demonstrated that American ingenuity can defeat German technology. You've demonstrated that courage combined with mechanical thinking can change battle outcomes. General Harrison promoted Mitchell on the spot. General Harrison awarded Mitchell the Silver Star. General Harrison assigned Mitchell to the position of battalion mechanical officer. General Harrison gave Mitchell authority over all vehicle maintenance and improvised anti-tank tactics for the entire battalion. Mitchell's trap became military legend within hours. Other American units heard about the Panzer destroyed by improvised explosives. American commanders wanted to replicate Mitchell's tactics. American military planners wanted to study Mitchell's methods. American intelligence officers wanted to analyze the mechanical approach to anti-tank warfare. Military engineers began studying Mitchell's trap design. Military engineers recognized the brilliant simplicity of the approach. Military engineers understood that disabled vehicles could be converted into effective anti-tank obstacles. Military engineers began training soldiers in improvised anti-tank trap construction. Mitchell's tactical innovation spread through American forces. Mitchell's methods saved American lives across multiple battlefields. After that battle, Mitchell created 17 additional improvised anti-tank traps. 16 of the 17 traps successfully destroyed or disabled German tanks. Mitchell's tactics influenced American anti-tank doctrine for decades after the war. Mitchell's improvised explosive approaches became the prototype for modern anti-tank mines. Mitchell's mechanical thinking revolutionized American anti-tank tactics. Mitchell was eventually promoted to officer rank. Mitchell attended military engineering schools. Mitchell eventually became a full colonel. Mitchell became known throughout the Army as the mechanic who stopped Panzer tanks with improvised explosives. Mitchell became legendary for understanding that mechanical thinking and engineering innovation could overcome conventional military superiority. The general who promoted Mitchell on that snowy battlefield kept the Silver Star citation on his office wall for 50 years. The general told Mitchell's story repeatedly. The general used Mitchell as an example of why the Army needed to value mechanical expertise and engineering thinking. The general understood that armies were won not just by soldiers with guns, but by mechanics with brilliant ideas. Mitchell's crazy trick that December day in 1944 changed American military tactics forever. One mechanic with one insane idea and technical expertise demonstrated that improvisation could defeat German armor. One American soldier with courage and mechanical knowledge proved that ingenuity was more powerful than conventional firepower. One tank mechanic's crazy idea saved thousands of American lives and influenced military doctrine for generations. Часть 2. Продолжение. Максимум текста. Боевые следствия и легенда. The news of Mitchell's trap spread through American military channels with extraordinary speed. Within 24 hours, every combat division in the European theater had heard about the mechanic who destroyed a panzer using improvised explosives. Within 48 hours, Army Corps of Engineers headquarters was requesting detailed technical documentation of Mitchell's trap design. Within 72 hours, military intelligence had classified Mitchell's methods as strategic military innovation. Mitchell's crazy idea was becoming military doctrine. General Dwight Eisenhower received a briefing about Mitchell's tactical approach 3 days after the battle. Eisenhower understood the significance of what Mitchell had accomplished. Eisenhower ordered that Mitchell's anti-tank trap design be distributed to all American combat units. Eisenhower ordered that American soldiers receive training in improvised anti-tank trap construction. Eisenhower personally recommended Mitchell for promotion. Eisenhower understood that American ingenuity could overcome German industrial superiority. Eisenhower understood that one mechanic's brilliant idea could influence entire military campaigns. Mitchell received orders to train other American mechanics in anti-tank trap construction. Mitchell traveled to military bases throughout Europe. Mitchell trained hundreds of American soldiers in improvised explosive techniques. Mitchell designed 17 different anti-tank trap configurations. Mitchell adapted his tactics to different terrain and German tank types. Mitchell created specialized traps for Panther tanks. Mitchell created specialized traps for Tiger tanks. Mitchell created specialized traps for Panzer IVs. Mitchell created specialized traps for anti-tank work in urban environments. Mitchell created specialized traps for anti-tank work in open terrain. Mitchell became the expert in improvised anti-tank tactics across the entire Army. Other American mechanics began creating their own improvised anti-tank traps based on Mitchell's designs. American mechanics destroyed German tanks at Bastogne using Mitchell's trap methods. American mechanics destroyed German tanks during the Rhineland campaign using Mitchell's trap methods. American mechanics destroyed German tanks during the Rhine crossing using Mitchell's trap methods. Mitchell's tactical innovation was killing German tanks throughout the European campaign. German High Command issued strategic orders specifically addressing American improvised anti-tank trap threats. German military intelligence analyzed Mitchell's trap designs. German engineers recognized the engineering brilliance behind the approach. German commanders understood that their armor advantage was being neutralized by American improvisation. German military planners had to change tactics because of Mitchell's innovations. German tank crews began conducting sweep operations before advancing. German tank crews began searching for hidden explosives. German tank tactics had to adapt to American improvised defenses. The impact on American soldier morale was incalculable. American soldiers had been terrified of German tanks. American soldiers had believed German armor was unstoppable. Mitchell's trap had proven this fear was false. Mitchell's trap had proven that Americans could fight back. Mitchell's trap had proven that ingenuity could overcome superior firepower. American soldiers throughout the European theater gained confidence that German armor was not invincible. American soldiers began believing they could win the war. Mitchell was eventually promoted to captain. Mitchell was then promoted to major. Mitchell attended the Army War College after the war. Mitchell eventually retired as a colonel. Mitchell became one of the most decorated Army engineers in American military history. Mitchell was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Mitchell was awarded the Silver Star multiple times. Mitchell was awarded commendations from 6 European nations. Mitchell became a living symbol of American military innovation and tactical genius. After the war, Mitchell wrote military manuals on anti-tank tactics. Mitchell's manuals became required reading at Army officer candidate schools. Mitchell's manuals became required reading at Army engineer training courses. Mitchell's manuals became required reading at Army Command and General Staff College. Mitchell's methods influenced American military doctrine for 3 decades. Mitchell's approach to solving military problems through mechanical innovation became Army philosophy. The disabled Panzer tank from the original battle was recovered by American forces. The tank was transported to the United States. The tank was placed in the Army Military History Museum. The tank remains on display today as historical evidence of American tactical innovation. Visitors can see the blast damage on the German armor. Visitors can see the destruction caused by improvised explosives. The Panzer tank is labeled with a description of the battle and Mitchell's tactical approach. Sergeant James Mitchell's crazy idea on that December day in 1944 fundamentally changed American military doctrine. One mechanic's improvisation saved thousands of American lives. One soldier's ingenuity defeated German tactical superiority. One American's courage demonstrated that innovation could overcome conventional military firepower. The story of Mitchell's trap became part of American military legend. The story was told and retold by veterans. The story was included in historical accounts of the European campaign. The story was cited in military textbooks as an example of how human ingenuity could influence military outcomes. The story demonstrated that wars were not won just by superior firepower, but by superior thinking. General Charles Harrison, who promoted Mitchell on that snowy battlefield, wrote about the experience in his memoirs. Harrison described the moment when he realized this young mechanic had fundamentally changed the nature of anti-tank warfare. Harrison described how he immediately understood the strategic significance of what Mitchell had accomplished. Harrison described how he knew at that moment that Mitchell would become a legendary figure in American military history. Years after the war, Mitchell returned to the battlefield with the general. The two men stood at the location where the trap had destroyed the Panzer. The disabled Sherman tank had long been removed. The forest had reclaimed the landscape. But the memory remained. The general looked at Mitchell and said, "That was the most important moment of the entire war. You proved that one man with one idea could change everything." Mitchell's legacy extends far beyond World War II. Military academies worldwide study Mitchell's anti-tank trap design. Military engineers cite Mitchell's improvised approach as revolutionary. Military historians recognize Mitchell as one of the most important tactical innovators of World War II. Mitchell's approach to solving military problems through mechanical thinking became standard military practice. The Panzer commander who was killed in the explosion was never identified. German records indicated only that a tank commander was killed in an explosion by unknown cause. German military intelligence initially believed the road was mined. German military intelligence eventually realized that a disabled tank had been converted into a trap. German military intelligence issued warnings about American improvised anti-tank tactics. German military planners had to develop new tactics to counter American improvisation. Mitchell's trap influenced the development of modern anti-tank mines. Modern anti-tank mines use similar pressure-activated detonation principles that Mitchell created. Modern military engineers recognize Mitchell's improvised trap as the predecessor to modern anti-tank technology. Mitchell's mechanical thinking from 1944 influenced anti-tank weapons development throughout the remainder of the 20th century. In the decades following the war, Mitchell established an engineering company. Mitchell's company specialized in mechanical engineering and tactical equipment design. Mitchell's company worked on defense contracts for the United States military. Mitchell's company designed innovative solutions to military engineering problems. Mitchell remained true to his core principle. Improvisation and mechanical thinking could solve seemingly impossible problems. Mitchell was invited to speak at military academies throughout America. Mitchell gave lectures at West Point. Mitchell gave lectures at Army War College. Mitchell gave lectures at military strategy seminars. Mitchell always emphasized the same message. Mechanical thinking combined with courage and innovation could overcome any obstacle. Mitchell always pointed back to that moment in December 1944 when he realized that one disabled tank could be converted into a weapon that would change the battle outcome. The story of Sergeant James Mitchell's crazy trick became part of American military folklore. Veterans told the story to their children. Children grew up hearing about the mechanic who stopped the Panzer with improvised explosives. The story represented American values: ingenuity, courage, innovation, and refusal to accept defeat. The story represented the American character, facing impossible odds and finding innovative solutions. General Charles Harrison kept the Silver Star citation that awarded Mitchell's medal. Harrison kept the citation on his office wall throughout his military career. Harrison kept the citation on his home office wall throughout his retirement. When Harrison passed away, his family donated the citation to the Army Military History Museum. The Silver Star citation and the battle account are now displayed alongside the destroyed Panzer tank. Mitchell's legacy is that one person with mechanical knowledge, courage, and willingness to think unconventionally can change historical events. Mitchell proved that improvisation could overcome superior firepower. Mitchell proved that innovation could defeat conventional military tactics. Mitchell proved that American ingenuity was the ultimate weapon. That December day in 1944, when a crazy mechanic destroyed a Panzer tank with improvised explosives, the entire nature of military warfare was fundamentally changed forever.